Welcome, everybody. This is Nancy Siegel, Solutions for the Workplace, and Ellen Steverson, Starting Block Career Services. And this is our podcast, Bite-Sized Career Strategies. And this series of podcasts, we are talking about interesting career searches on Google. Zippia.com put together a list of job and career related searches by state. And today we are going to talk about a couple of things that Zippia identified as the most common career related searches in Arizona, Utah, and Colorado. And so those states, along with Nevada, were really focused on three things: the Great Resignation, what should I do with my life, and how to quit your job. And so Ellen is my partner in crime. She focuses on private sector career coaching. I focus on federal career coaching and all things federal. So I think we're going to start today with the Great Resignation. So Ellen, what are you seeing in your career practice on the Great Resignation?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Nancy. I definitely am seeing an uptick in people calling, wanting to quit their jobs, and as Arizona people are Googling, what should I do with my life? I have had more conversations lately with people calling, and that's how they start. I'm not sure what I want to do with my life. I want to quit my job, or I've already quit my job. The Great Resignation, also known as the Big Quit and the Great Reshuffle, really has wreaked havoc on pretty much the entire U.S. labor market. Started with the pandemic in early 2021, but now the quit rate has reached a 20-year high. So people are just quitting, and I'm definitely noticing it. Are you, Nancy?
So I'm seeing a lot of what should I do with my life on the federal side of things. I am not seeing as much quitting because the federal government offers flexibilities that are not that common in the private sector. They also offer real benefits, health insurance, etc., retirement, those kinds of things that are more difficult to get in the private sector. But I am getting a lot of calls from people who want to rethink their entire work life. So, for example, this week, I heard from someone who was an immigration attorney for the government, had spent 15, 18 years in it. And they said they were looking to change things up and they thought they might want to go to tech. And I'm like, okay, what are you offering to tech? And they said, oh, well, I'm smart. Okay, get in line. And so those are the kinds of things that I am seeing.
Right. And I think people who work in the federal government understand it's not easy to get a federal job. So they took the time and effort to get in. They're not going to just walk out. Whereas I think a lot of Americans working for small or private or medium companies know that they can, within a short period, find another job. Now, is that true when the market's saturated? That's one of the biggest mistakes I see people making is they're quitting their job under the assumption that all these new jobs are coming back, when in reality, the market is saturated. So it is taking a good while. And they thought, oh, well, I have a new job in 3 to 4 weeks, but it's really 3 to 4 months, maybe 5 months, 6 months. If they're changing industries like you're talking about, going from being an attorney to being tech, that will take a while because you have to find the right person to persuade them that whatever skills you have, you can use it in the tech world. So, or halfway through the job search, to be quite frank, they realize I don't have the right skills. And they then pivot back to something they really do know how to do, or they pivot and have to go to school, get a certificate, whatever.
Right. And so the Great Resignation is a real thing. I mean, the data is absolutely everywhere. But I think the piece that many people are missing is the what should I do with my life piece, which is all about assessing what your skills are and what you have to offer.
And what an employer wants and is willing to buy from you. Like, again, at the end of the day, it's a trade. I have these skills. You need an employer who will say, hey, I need those skills. I want you. I'm going to give you so much money, basically, hence buying the skill set. So, so before you say, I want to quit my job, like in Utah, you should definitely take an assessment. Now, obviously, there are professional assessments, or get out a piece of paper, write down the top skills you have, like skills like project management, software development, like real skills like that. And then look at job postings or go on onetonline.org, which is the government's largest database of all jobs in America, and start, cross-referencing the skills you have to see what jobs you can get. What assessments do you like, Nancy?
So ONET actually has an assessment.
Yes.
Where you can figure out where your skills are. There are classic books that have assessments like What Color is Your Parachute? That's been around for 20 plus years. There is DISC, there's FIRO B. So there's a lot of assessments out there. Some of them are free, some of them cost money, some really require a professional career coach to administer and interpret. But I think it's really important that before you quit your job, you do that self-assessment. What am I good at? What do I want to do? What am I offering others? Where are my gaps to get where I want to? And how do I close them?
Right. And that's an excellent point. I can't tell you how many times I redirect my clients not to quit their job immediately because they have gaps. And the company they work for, they can pick up quicker projects and assignments to fill in those gaps and get experience in by just talking to the boss or talking to a supervisor or a coworker and then getting them. So don't quit. And as my mother would always say, don't cut off your nose to spite your face. Think about what you're trying to do and be strategic.
And in the federal government, I think it is not easy, but also quite possible to fill those gaps. I encourage federal personnel to request details in areas that they don't typically work in, or rotational assignments. Mm-hmm. Also, part of usajobs.gov is openopportunities.gov. And openopportunities.gov offers current federal employees chances to work on projects at other agencies, which is great not only for expanding your skill set, but also for improving your network. So agencies that need temporary part-time assistance will post on open opportunities, and they will say what they need, what skills they're looking for, how many hours a week, and how many weeks or months might be needed. And oftentimes, in fact, most of the time, you don't have to leave your regular full-time job. It's an opportunity to expand your portfolio. And so that's another great way for current federal employees to broaden their skill sets, after they have assessed their skills gaps.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. What a great way to do that. That's a great part of working for the federal government for sure. In some companies, my husband, he splits up employees amongst different groups, and there are opportunities like that. Obviously, if you're at a small company, they might not cross-train and do those type of things. But you know what? Sometimes it just takes a moment. I had a guy that was a project manager and had no budget experience. And I said, well, who does the budgets in your company? And he was like, well, that's Bob down the hallway. And I said, how about you ask Bob and just say, hey, I want to help and learn more about budgets. Can I take one of your budgets? And he texted me the next day and he was like, oh my God, it was so simple. I asked, he said, here you go. So again, don't be afraid. And people always, oh, well, I'm not getting paid to do that. I'm not going to do that. Again, it's short-sighted to think money is everything. When you're trying to build your gaps and your skills and your strengths, don't think about the money now because it's really the money in the future that you want to be making too.
Right. And for our listeners, I want to give them the website that they can go to. It's called OpenOps, OPPS.usajobs.gov. So it's OpenOps with 2 P's and a S on the end, .usajobs.gov. And I would encourage you to look at that if you're a federal employee, because it's an easy way to improve your network, broaden your skills, and really sort of embody the one government philosophy and break down those stovepipes.
Absolutely. And the other site we gave, I'll repeat that a little slower, is onetonline.org. So it's ONET online, ONLINE.org. So that's great. So you've assessed, you got new skills, life is going good, but you still want to quit your job. Okay. Let's talk about, there are proper steps to quitting a job. First one, as we've kind of mentioned, is decide if now is really the right time. That's the first thing. Second thing I think is it is still common practice to give 2 weeks notice. That's professional. What do you think, Nancy? Is it 2 weeks in the federal government or even longer maybe?
So there is no regulation that says you must give a certain amount of notice. So let's say that as a baseline. However, there is professional courtesy. And professional courtesy is typically at least 2 weeks, and to provide your resignation in writing.
Yes, a letter of resignation is a wonderful idea. Keep it short, keep it professional, leave out any anger issues, topics. Now is not the time. People always think, oh, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to tell them, I'm going to let them have it. Again, short-sighted, because when you need a reference, think about that. Am I really going to give you a good reference if you go off when you're quitting? So really be mindful of your career, people. You have to own it and protect it.
In the federal government, the reason that you provide for leaving the federal government or leaving your job actually appears on your permanent paperwork in your official personnel file. So if you do in fact give a reason for leaving, please know that will live on in infamy in your government-wide personnel file in perpetuity. So I just wanted to make that clear. And that's another reason not to go out in flames.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And, when somebody calls for a reference, they might not be technically shouldn't be giving reasons why you left, or they're supposed to just say how many hours you worked, what your pay was, and yes, you worked there. But just by somebody's tone and their voice, when I reference checked people, I can tell if they were good employees or not. So again, be mindful of that. But what about scheduling a meeting with the HR person? Now, if you have an HR department in your company, they might want to do an exit interview. Okay. Again, I think, really think long and hard if what you're about to rant about really is appropriate. What do you think, Nancy?
Some federal agencies do, in fact, have a formal exit interview program. Many do not. Some will send you a survey. Either way, or any of the above, I think you need to be very circumspect about anything you say or anything you put in writing, because you will need a reference going forward. You don't want to leave on a bad note. Most organizations are pretty defensive of their management and will tend to put the blame on the employee regardless. So I think caution is appropriate.
I totally agree with you. And lastly, I would say wrap up your job professionally, work hard. Don't all of a sudden be like, oh, I quit my job, so now I'm just going to sit around for 2 weeks, and transition to your new job knowing you were professional and did the best job you could for them prior to leaving. I quit a job one time and was moving on to another thing, did it all correctly. And I had extra days and they were like, well, you don't have to come in because technically you now have days off. But I was working on a project that had to get done. I went in the next day and got it done because that was more important to me than having a day off just because I have it and I'm entitled to it, right? So again, I would encourage everyone to really end in a positive note.
And you should be prepared. Now, this will not happen in the federal government, but in the private sector, when you resign, you could be told to leave that day. So you want to make sure that you have everything in order. And please know you cannot take anything with you that belongs to the federal government or that belongs to your private sector employer.
Absolutely. I used to, when I would teach young adults about careers and employability skills, again, there's no difference. When you're walking out with a stapler and a pen and pencils, you might be like, I deserve this. But at the end of the day, it's still stealing. You don't own it. It's company property. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't let the anger get you and then you're doing something silly like that. That's an excellent point. And again, if you're really doing it properly and you have planned ahead, you shouldn't have a desk filled with personal stuff. I used to keep shoes in my desk when I worked in Manhattan. Again, if I'm quitting, I'm taking that stuff home. In my husband's company, they walk people out with security, make sure you have nothing on you and stuff like that. So again, be prepared for that.
Absolutely. And records. I want to make sure you talked about stuff. I want to make sure we mention records. They don't belong to you either.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And hopefully along the way, we have talked about this in other podcasts, please keep your evaluations, your resumes, things like that on your home computer so that you have records and stuff like that. Don't think you're going to be able to steal them from the company because they keep them, but you should be able to get a copy and a version of it and you keep that at home. So absolutely. Well, this has been a great conversation, Nancy. Hopefully Arizona, Utah, and Colorado people have listened today and are getting vital information on how to do it right.
All right. So I am Nancy Siegel, Solutions for the Workplace. My partner in crime, Ellen Steverson, Starting Block Career Services. Thank you for listening, and we will see you again soon.
That's right. Connect with us on LinkedIn. See you soon.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please visit Nancy or Ellen's website for additional information about our services, a free tip sheet which highlights our discussion today, and be sure to tune in to our next podcast, which will be posted soon. Thank you.